ha sido una experiencia maravillosa, fantástica.
It's incredible music, actually, and it's been very surprising for me.
It's a creation of absolutely new piece, wonderful piece of the opera.
I don't think anybody knew that Liszt actually made an effort composing an Italian opera and getting so deep in the style of bel canto.
And at the very least, I thought this must be rescued. This has to become something that the world can hear. Liszt was very well known as a pianist. He was extremely famous and toured widely. But he wanted, above all else, to be accepted as a composer, a real composer, like Rossini, Meyerbeer, and the young Wagner. So he felt his way to this identity was to write an Italian opera. He tried for nearly 7 years to do this. He had tremendous problems with the librettist, and when he finally received the libretto, he composed the entirety of the first act, which is what we'll hear in Weimar. The manuscript was catalogued in 1910 in the Goethe and Schill archive, and it was always known to Liszt scholars, but it was assumed to be fragmentary and often illegible. When I first discovered the manuscript, I looked at it and I was astonished to see that Liszt had written out much more and much more clearly than it seemed in the literature.
My character is Mirra. She is a Greek slave, and she was brought over from Greece by the king's soldiers. She is, for one, in love with the king, but she's also conflicted because this is the man who took her away from her home and who enslaved her. We know she's a concubine, she's a slave, and she says about herself, I am a slave mocked by fate.
Interpreto a Sardanapalo, a rey de los asirios. Básicamente, en este primer acto nos encontramos con dos aspectos importantes del personaje. Uno es que es el rey de los asirios, pero es un hombre de paz. Y por otro lado está el amor que siente hacia Mirra. Un amor que de hecho finalmente le hace ir a la guerra, ya que la propia Mirra le pide, le exige que defienda a su pueblo.
The name of my character is Belezo. Belezo is kind of a priest, and he comes to the king and he's trying to make the king to protect his country. The mission of my character is to convince him and to protect the government.
The manuscript for Sardanapalo is written for piano in a kind of augmented piano vocal score. I would describe it as a skeletal score. It has cues for instrumentation, and in fact, he had planned to give the score to his assistant Joachim Raff to orchestrate, but it never came to that. So what I did was to look at all of the scores, operatic and symphonic, that lay on Liszt's desk in the 1850s, to try to match textures, to see how he envisaged certain kinds of accompanimental texture. The libretto for this music survives only as underlay in the music manuscript. In some places, words are missing. I was delighted to work with a talented team of scholars, Marco Beghelli, Francesca Vella in Cambridge, and David Rosen at Cornell University. Together, we were able to look at the metrical and rhyming scheme and work out, as far as possible, what the missing text most likely could have been. This reconstruction was nothing short of a heroic task on the part of my fellow scholars, and it allowed the music to be brought to performance, because without the libretto, we couldn't have the music.
I felt that singers are enjoying very much the process, because also for them it's an interesting adventure of discovering a new opera.
Tiene una línea que, de hecho, ciertamente puede simular un Wagner, un Strauss, y es interesante sobre todo para las voces. El poder trabajar este repertorio, encuentras colores, matices interesantísimos en esta pieza, muy particular en Liszt.
For me, this style is so new, so I couldn't compare it to other operas, like to Traviata, for example.
It's quite exciting for me because I'm generally a studious person, and I like to study music from a really mental place of study. So to work with David, who knows the score so well, of course he orchestrated it, and who lived and breathed it for so many months, is really wonderful because he is like an oracle of information.
When Liszt composed the music, he was the Kapellmeister who conducted the Staatskapelle Weimar. And Liszt worked here in Weimar, living in the Altenburg. The fact that we can now bring this music into the world with these same institutions, I think is poetic. And I think it's fitting that the Staatskapelle under Kirill Karabits should be the orchestra to really deliver this.
Weimar and Liszt, they just belong together. This orchestra and Liszt, they belong together. This is the only piece that I've known by Liszt which exists in that form, and also stylistically. I think it's unique. I hope that after this performance we will have shown something that the music world wasn't aware about. Liszt and Italian opera.